Good afternoon and welcome to the Gold Coats and Gun Short News here on YouTube and DLive. My name is Tom Luongo. It is Tuesday, day after Memorial Day, May 28th, 2019. I hope everybody's having a great day. Got a lot to talk about today. I wanted to do some redux on the European parliamentary elections because, well, we've been covering that in grave detail here on this channel for quite a while now. And I'm sure that you're all wondering what my take is going to be on this. So we're going to get to that in just a minute. Just to understand that you can follow my work over tomluongo.me. You can follow me on Twitter at TFL1728. You can also support this channel directly by downloading, installing the Brave browser and earn BAT tokens while browsing in order to not only support this channel, but other publishers who have done so, who have signed up for the service as well. It's a way of ensuring that we're not all slaves to the Google ad machine. I feel very strongly about this, and I think it's something that we should be looking for every one of these alternative platforms and trying to make them as successful as possible. So until one of them finally shakes out and winds up becoming the winner. So that being said, let's get started. I'm sorry about that there was no live stream last night. Normally I do live streams at Monday nights at 8 p.m. It was Memorial Day and I felt like spending time with friends and family, and I'm sure you did too. So, why do you want to listen to me rant on about, terrible stuff all the time? All right, so let's get to it. Brexit, the EU elections, Nigel Farage, Matteo Salvini, Angela Merkel, Guy Verhofstadt, a whole cast of characters that we've been dealing with now for weeks on end. What happened on this weekend? Well, the truth of the matter is that everything that had been set in motion by the polls pretty much came to pass. Now, before we go too far here, I want to make a couple of points about the results themselves. There's a lot of chatter in the media about how well the Greens did around Europe, about how high the voter turnout was. And it's good in some ways that there were a lot of countries that put other things on the ballot in time with the EU parliamentary elections in order to goose voter turnout. And I think that was done as a defensive measure by the European Union, in coordination to try and stop the rise of a lot of the quote-unquote nationalist populist right. I prefer the term sovereigntist. Hate to use the word nationalist because, of course, they've destroyed the word nationalist. That somehow is kind of evil or Nazi or whatever you want to call it. But the truth of the matter is these are people who believe in their own sovereignty first and everything else second. And that's been made into a dirty word, or at least a dirty attitude. So we're trying to continue to shift away from the specter of virulent nationalism. This is not true. So part of that, so having a number of other things on the ballot along with the EU elections this weekend helped the goose voter turnout and probably rose the results in certain countries that were vulnerable to a wipeout, right? That's fine. nothing wrong with that. This is the kind of electioneering stuff that goes on all the time. That's not a complaint. It's just an observation. Now, there was nothing else on the ballot in Britain. And the elections went pretty much to form in terms of the percentages. What we saw was a very strong hardening. We saw this all the way across Europe, to be honest with you. A very strong hardening of positions, either for the EU or against the EU. This was very much a referendum on the viability of the EU, and that centrist parties all across the European Union got crushed or lost significant amounts. And we're seeing this. We're seeing protest votes on the left as well as the right. That centrist cartel-style coalition governments in places like Germany and Spain and others have done nothing to advance anybody's They've done nothing for the people, and the people are tired of it, and they're angry with that. They want government that stands for something. If it's for more German control over the EU, well, fine, and more German control over the EU. If it's an embracing of their leftism in Spain, it's an embracing of leftism in Spain. That trend's been on the rise in Spain for years now. A populist left the populist left has been rising in Spain for quite a while now, against the kind of center-right authoritarianism of Mariano Rajoy. So it's no surprise to see the results like we saw in Spain. Certainly in the right, we just saw the Spanish snap elections not a couple of weeks ago. We got a reaffirmation of those same results in the European elections. Why are we shocked by this? But at the same time, there's still sincere divisions within the Spanish electorate over how Catalonia has been treated. And Catalonian independence is not off the table, and it's not a done deal. It's not an issue that's been settled for a generation or 2 or 3 or a century or whatever. It's going to rear its ugly head soon, again. So it's nothing new here. All of the trends that we have been witnessing and all the trends that we've been chronicling played out over the European elections over the weekend. So from that perspective, they were pretty by the book. But I want to go into something a little deeper than that now. So it is what it is, right? So the Greens and the harder, the hard kind of non-neoliberals, like hard progressive liberals, gained. The populist, more sovereigntist right gained. It means that the EU is going to have a harder time governing. They're going to have a hard time putting together a council of ministers. Certainly, they're not going to be able to run roughshod. The EPP and the Social Democrats are not going to be able to run roughshod over everybody else and just appoint who they want. There's going to be people, from Salvini's alliance and from the Greens. They're going to be put in positions of power. And remember, the Greens themselves are also split. There's 2 different Green parties within the European Union, and one is vaguely Eurosceptic, and one is kind of classically integrationist, commie green, for lack of a better term. And we saw the same thing in Britain, right? We saw the Brexit party take almost 32% of the vote. We saw the Liberal Democrats and the Greens gain at Labour's expense. We saw Brexit take over most of the Tories' vote, and it's all kind of split now. But if you look carefully, and I went to Britain Elects this morning and made sure that I had my numbers right. A little bit of 10 minutes worth of research. So Britain Elects broke down the European elections by 372 constituencies or local authorities. I think 370 of them have results in. So not counting those as wins, the Brexit Party won 258 out of 372 local authorities. That's very significant. And most of those were by a landslide. There were a few that were very close. A couple of those I didn't actually count because they were all within a point. If they were within a point, point or two, in a 3-way split, I didn't count that as a win for the Brexit Party. There's no point. Because, Labour or the Lib Debs are going to win that election in the end, in a general election. But it gives you an idea in a way to handicap what's going to come in an eventual general election. You've got a lot of it is being made in this election, which is a complete wipeout for the political establishment. It's complete and absolute wipeout for the political establishment. And they're doing their very best to spin this as best they can as positive. And the big one, of course, is that hard Remain parties outpolled hard Brexit parties by blah. Well, no, not really. Because the popular referendum has already happened. Brexit and Article 50 are law. Now it's a matter of what is Parliament going to implement. And currently you have a Parliament that's made up of about 500 Remainers and 150 hard Leavers. And they have screwed the pooch, leading to this weekend's results. Go forward. The Tories are going to start a 2-month or 1.5-month process of trying to figure out who their next leader is going to be and what kind of government they put together. If they can't put together a government, then the government will have to collapse and they'll have to hold a general election. Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, is going to go out of his way is looking to or making noises about calling for a vote of no confidence when Parliament goes back into session for the current Tory government. We saw Alexis Tsipras, the Prime Minister of Greece, get trounced there. He only lost by 10 points. And he stepped down, immediately called for snap elections, saying he's lost the confidence of the people and lost control of the confidence of the Parliament. You don't see the Tories doing that. And it's because of the stakes involved. Greece is, it's Greece. The UK, far more systemically important and far more, while they should step down and Theresa May should dissolve the Parliament and they should call for snap elections, let the chips fall where they may. That's not going to happen because they're scared to death that Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party would win. That was interesting. I was talking to my wife before I came on today, and she's been listening to Sargon of Akkad. I haven't had a chance to listen to Sargon's comments on this, but Sargon apparently, who ran as an MEP for UKIP, and they were fully expecting to get the results that they had. And what's good to note is that they're realistic about what Farage is doing. Sargon's all supportive of Farage storming the Bastille or storming Westminster. There's a mixed metaphor for you, and delivering Brexit. Now, whether or not Farage is prepared to fix all the other problems within the country itself is a different story. But you can even see within the hard Brexit, or within the hard quote unquote right, within the opposition to the current political trends in England, there's an understanding that there's a specific order of operations that has to happen in order to get anything substantive done. And you'll see the media and the political establishment, the Alistair Campbells and the Lord Adonises and the Dominic Reeves and the rest of them will all focus on the here and the now. They'll all focus on the trying to divert attention away from the order of operations, which actually threatens their power. And this goes doubly for the people who supported the Lib Dems and the Greens on the basis of wanting to remain in the EU. And they all understand this, that same dynamic. They all understand that that's what the issue is. And so you constantly focus on, well, we'll lose GDP, or we'll lose this, or we'll lose that, or all these things that we'll lose, never focusing on the reality that it's what you gain from getting control over your sovereignty again. And their inherent and implicit argument is that getting our sovereignty back is worthless. And that's a terrible, terrible message. People never want to hear that. They never want to hear that they're not the masters of their own fate, and that they're not capable of making decisions for themselves. And so it's bad political optics. It's bad. It's bad messaging at every level. It's why they're going to lose the general election coming forward. So right now, the whole Brexit Party thing is still very new. A lot of people woke up in England this weekend and went, wow, Farage won another European Parliament. How did he do? What the hell? It hasn't paralyzed the entire country. Otherwise, we would have seen more than 37% turnout. But I can tell you that we're going to see much higher voter turnout come the general election. Brexit, the Labour and the Tories are all polling within about 3 or 4 points of each other. So they're all within now the margin of error. And honestly, the Lib Dems and the Greens have crested. They're not going to see any more support than they have right now. And theirs is a protest ceiling. Theirs is a protest vote. And also remember something else. This is a fractured left. It's a united right and a fractured left. Because UKIP and Brexit and the Tories, what's left of the Tories, are for the most part all going to be on the same message. Deliver Brexit, fix the country. The left is all saying, from various versions of this, well, we want part of it's going to be Scottish independence, and part of it's going to be Wales independence, and part of it's going to be workers' rights, and part of it's going to be this, and part of it's going to be, and they're all split. The split is happening amongst the left because at the end of the day, we are still caught in a deflationary environment at the edge of a sovereign debt crisis, a debt saturation, global debt saturation, where the promises of the left and the promises of the social democratic systems of the past that have dominated Europe and the West for the last 100 years. There's all this kind of soft Marxism for the last 100 years. All of it, all of those promises have failed. And we're at the point now where they're going to have to justify their broken promises. And they're having to justify that broken promise to an increasingly larger group of people within younger demographics. We saw it all across Europe. Golden Dawn, the quote-unquote neo-Nazi party in Greece, took 14% or something, like took double-digit percentage amongst 18 to 24-year-olds in Greece. This is a party that usually polls between 1% to 4%. So this is a big deal. And we're sitting here watching the traffic splash by, and everybody's kind of, whistling past their own graveyard, going, oh, well, Hard Remain got 40%. Yeah, but dude, that's not about Hard Remain. Y'all are split. Y'all still have to deal with your broken promises. You're not going to, you're not going to win. Well, you accuse everybody else of breaking their promises. They never even got, these people are so feckless. They're so dishonest. They're so mendacious. They're so unutterably idiotic that we don't see that. Complaining that, well, you said everything would be great if we just had Brexit. Well, 3 years later, nothing's better. I'm like, well, they haven't had Brexit yet. It's like, are you kidding me? You saw it but you can see the divide happening, especially in Italy, especially in Hungary. So all the places that we saw strong Eurosceptic voting, strong nationalist or sovereigntist movements. Poland, PIS party, strengthened their position. Hungary, Italy, even France. Now, France is very, very confused at this point. And it's not going to happen and the change in France is not going to happen overnight. Okay? France is very confused. They don't trust their government at all. But they're not interested in moving, quote unquote, right wing either. So what's happening, so what you can see is those places are now in stark opposition to the places that are EU integrationists. And that's setting you up in the long term for a complete breakdown of the EU in its current form. You're going to see countries leave the EU. The populist waves within them are big enough that they were going to leave the EU. And what I've been saying for years, and I remember listening to Jim Rickards ages ago about this, that eventually the EU will have to break down into a northern currency bloc, and everybody else and all the periphery that they've bolted on is all going to leave. And that includes Italy, and it's going to lose both Italy and the UK. So yes, so I'm looking at some of the comments that are coming through on YouTube, and I'm just like, I'm trying to finish off my comments first before I go directly to that stuff. So now that I'm here, I'm going to look at some of the comments that have come through. Liz Sandy asks, it seems that the sovereigntist / commie divide is growing throughout the world. Are civil wars inevitable? I don't know about civil wars per se, but definitely social upheaval and political upheaval. And I don't think Brexit is, technically a civil war between the EU and Britain, though they're kind of fighting it politically like it is one. Mark Malone makes two very interesting comments. First, he says, look, Farage mobilized all the Leave sides on the left and right and nearly doubled the vote of the second largest party. That's genius. But he not only mobilized the Leave vote, he also mobilized the hard Remain vote against Labor. That's the real genius. I think if that's what you meant, and that's Mark by that, then that's exactly right. So now you've got the left all splintered across three different parties, none of whom agree with each other, none of whom like each other. The Greens, the Lib Dems, and Labor don't like each other. They don't only agree on like basically one thing: stop Brexit. But that's not going to be enough to hold any kind of coalition government together. El Vaquero reminds us that some of the leftists are starting to figure out that open borders and massive welfare states don't work well together. No, they don't. Especially when you're the massive welfare state. If you're the ones doling out the massive welfare state benefits, California. So, yeah, I mean, and so Thornton reminds us that Le Pen really isn't very right wing. She's made to be out to be far right, but she's really not. She's no more far right wing than Matteo Salvini is. Neither of them are really far right. They're just everybody who's left of card carrying freaking Comintern commie, for fuck's sake, is considered is considered far right in Europe. It's just ridiculous. She's very leftist. By my standards, she's incredibly leftist. But that's fine. But for French standards, yeah, she's right wing, as Thornton reminds us. So it's all, again, some leftists, El Vaquero, are. Not the hard left libertarians, I can tell you that. But then those people don't really matter. But they are the ones that kind of dominate a lot of the creation of a lot of talking points about how open borders are right and this and that. They use all these fake libertarian arguments from moldy old lefties who, for a while were, against the idea of paying taxes. So, just crazy stuff at this point. Just crazy. Yeah, I know. I like Marine Le Pen too. Don't get me wrong. Thornton says, yeah, she is lefty, but I like her. I like her too. I think she stands for France first and everything else second. And she should stand for France first and everything else second. It doesn't, it does not matter at the end of the day. These things are not, look, I have a lot of respect for, Jean-Luc Mélenchon. Jean-Luc Mélenchon as well. He's also a leftist French nationalist. It's like everything else. Sovereign France first, fix the problem second. Okay? That's why I like Five Star Movement, even though I disagree with them on a great number of things. Yeah, El Vaquero, if a real far-right leader were to take power, everybody on the left would be scared to leave their houses because of the violent paramilitary groups beating the hell out of their opponents. Exactly. Anybody, that's not it. It's they ratcheting up the rhetoric to call anybody even remotely left of Bertolt Brecht or left of freaking Che Guevara or right of Che Guevara or right of Bertolt Brecht, for Christ's sake. Calling them a Nazi is insane. It precludes rational discussion, and it shows you just how desperate and insecure and sad the people that you're dealing with are. That's where everything is. You have to continue to ratchet up the rhetoric in order to try and create even wider divisions and prey on people's in-group, out-group bias in their tendency to, form up with and get into our chimpanzee brain and form up into Team Red versus Team Blue fight. And it's not about that. Nichols says they can't fix the problem. I agree. 40 trillion euros of state debts. How do you fix that without letting old people starve? And leaving the younger generation in complete debt slavery? I don't know. You default on it all is what you do. But they can't default on it all. Alistair Campbell, yeah, I saw that this morning, some edges. Alistair Campbell was expelled from Labour, saying in an interview he voted Lib Dem as a protest. Perhaps this election allows Labour to shed its Blairite fleas. Maybe. I don't know. Who's the closest to a libertarian in Europe? I don't know, honestly, because none of them are really libertarians. In the UK, it's red on red and blue on blue. Yeah, they really have fractured in many ways. But don't forget that at a certain level, Farage is trying desperately to bring the sovereigntist issue directly to bear. So go back to what I said earlier. If this was a general election, Farage would have won in a walk and would be prime minister today because he'd have over 450 seats. And even if that doesn't actually translate into a general election, if the numbers are a little lower, then even if the numbers are lower, which I don't think they really will be, it easily still wind up with a clear majority. And that's what they're worried about desperately. How did Jonathan Gillespie asked, how did Scotland become so leftist Marxist? Welfare. The dole. What were those pirate parties in Ireland? The pirate parties were mostly in Iceland and others. And in Iceland, again, another place where right-wing parties in Iceland are effectively left-wing. But they're more libertarian, but they're not libertarians. Yeah, Farage's strategy is ground up. It's absolutely, and you can do that in England. You have to remember something. You can do on-the-ground politics in England. You can do foot traffic politics in England because the country's really freaking small. You can't do foot traffic politics here in the United States. Okay? Oh, yeah, you can win a House seat or you can win a state Senate race or whatever when you only have to reach out to 70,000 people or 700,000 people and they all live within 30 or 40 miles of each other. You're talking about states in the United States that are bigger than most countries in Europe. Okay? It's harder to do in the United States. You have to use guerrilla viral stuff, guerrilla marketing, and guerrilla marketing here on the internet. But even so, nothing works better than face-to-face interaction. People believe you more when they see you in person. Even this is what makes a successful politician: the ability to lie right to somebody's face and ask them for their vote and be sincere about it. And most people are really bad at detecting liars. So yeah, Nickel agrees with me. They agreed on Scotland, cut off the funding from the UK, and it came over for the SNP. Oh, I know. That's why the SNP only functions because of the insane levels of support that they get from the central government. They're not going to get that from a Germany-led EU. I saw something this morning that Merkel is unretiring because she doesn't like the way the CDU is being handled by Annabelle Kranenbauer. Correct? Or is it Kranauer? AKK. I saw a thing on Zero Hedge this morning about it. And Merkel has very deftly managed her the opposition to her. And with AfD being crushed down to 10% and the Greens rising to 20%, she now feels like she's got the opportunity to grab the reins again and take hold of Germany. Also, with the rise of the Eurosceptic, she doesn't want to be out of power. So therefore, it's she still needs to have a place because because the possibility of her becoming European parliamentary president is, taking over for Juncker is zero. Yeah, I mean, it's not famously Ron Paul won his district in in Texas by always doing local politics, by walking door to door and talking to people about who he was, and just, you know, and then letting word of mouth spread that there was somebody real actually running for Congress. And it's how he won, and it's how he did it. And then after that, momentum takes over. All right. So what I want you to, the big takeaway here is the divisions are getting wider. Farage has got all the momentum here. The left is actually split in England, but it's hardening across Europe, across the countries that want to hold on to their leftism. They're holding on to it. Though very encouraged by things happening in places like Sweden, for example. And that all of this is going to create a much weaker EU in the end because of the divisions within. There's now clearer divisions within the EU now, with the EU Parliament and the Council of Ministers that's going to result from this. And at the end of the day, the rhetoric from guys like Verhofstadt are only going to get worse. And he's going to want to push even harder to remove people like Viktor Orban and Salvini and the rest of them. So we'll see what happens over the long term. All right, I'm going to go. I've got stuff to do. I've got thousands of words to write since I took most of this weekend off, and I'm a little behind today. So you guys take care. You have a great afternoon. We will talk soon. If you liked what you heard today, please give a like and subscribe down below. Let's try and get this channel up over 3,000 subs. That'd be great. All right, you guys be good. You have a great afternoon. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.